Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kelsey Woodworth. I am the Senior Marketing Manager here at Smartling, and I am joined today by Andrew Batwash, our Director of Language Services, and Olga Beregovaya, our VP of AI. So thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, cool. And we have some people from Seattle, Wales, Italy, Hong Kong. Great. Go ahead and drop in the chat where you're joining us from if you'd like. I am in Los Angeles, so I'll add that in for myself. And just a few things before we get started today. This session is going to be recorded, so if you have to step away for any reason, we will go ahead and send you the recording afterwards. You can drop your questions in the Q&A tab, and we will address those at the end. I think that's all. So let's get started. We're going to talk today about AIHT, a term that we've kind of been using the last few months, and really dig into what it actually is. So we want to start today with a poll. So if you could go ahead and weigh in, can you guess what AIHT means? So AI replacing humans, an aroma-infused hot tub, AI human translation, or rebranded MTPE? We'll wait a moment for. Okay, I think everybody gets it. And so, oh wait, let me share the.
We had 2 MTPE votes.
Yep.
We talk about that maybe.
Sorry, here we go.
There we go. Good.
Here is the end result. Yeah, so what do you guys make of the results? One aroma infused hot tub. Someone's paying attention.
Yeah. I think it's good. Maybe we can talk about why it's not rebranded MTPE and why this is really not replacing humans, right? We'll have some discussion on those 2 items.
Yeah. So of that kind of same vein, Andrew, you work with a lot of our customers at Smartling. And so if you could kick us off kind of talking about what AIHT means for our clients and the linguistic supply chain.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of talk about like why it's relevant now for customers. We just went through a period, last year, 18 months, where we saw a lot of I would say slow growth and maybe contraction in kind of the general business environment, but certainly in the tech space. And companies are for sure looking to do more with less, right? And that doesn't mean that they're looking to compromise on quality, or they're looking to compromise on service, or they still want to get their content out to customers in a way that they feel comfortable with, right? And so really what Smartling is trying to do is take the recent developments in AI, and Olga will certainly kind of talk us through those, but really present those to our customers as part of a solution that allows them to get the quality that they're looking for with improved service SLAs, and then lower costs, right? And so it's that do more with less in this environment where companies are working with less resources, maybe leaner localization teams, right? And really still have the ability to kind of go out there and drive growth, right, through localization. So I think that's why it's relevant to customers now. And I think we're really as a technology company well positioned to really act on that.
And so additionally, we work with a lot of translators, and how are we empowering them with this solution?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like even at Smartling, the evolution has been pretty dramatic in the last couple of years, I would say. We were at a place a few years ago where almost all of the translations were almost every task in the translation process, let me phrase it that way, was being done by a human, right? And they were completely generating the final output. And a lot of that stuff really lends itself well to automation. And we have opportunities to really allow our translators to flourish and focus on components of the translation process where they can really add value, bring their creativity, bring their expertise in a particular domain or particular type of content to bear on the translation, and really kind of like add more value in those particular areas, as opposed to rearranging a period or rearranging HTML tags or things like that that I think are more amenable to automation and AI processes. So, from that perspective, I think it's a better work environment for translators. And what we really want to be able to do is increase their productivity, right? And so they are going to be able to handle so much more volumes, right? And really be able to reap the benefit, right, of these tools. And so it's not really kind of replacing them. It's really putting them in a position to add more meaningful value.
Great, thank you. And I know there are always questions that come up regarding ethics around AI. And so, Olga, I was hoping you could share your point of view, on AI/HT from an ethical and a social responsibility standpoint.
Yeah, let's start from the very source. We take ethics and responsibility of AI deployment very, very seriously, very close to heart at Smartling. And even when you start from the source, we know that the more diverse and the more, yeah, I guess diverse is the right word, the more diverse the development team behind AI is, the more points of view we deliver and the more points of view we have. And it has huge impact on our product from diversity perspective, which also means that from the ethical perspective, we can cater to the needs of the broader audience. For instance, one of our team members, she's a native speaker of Chinese. One of our team members speaks perfect German. And like we come from different backgrounds. So that alone ensures that we come in with an open mind. So from the developer perspective. Now to Andrew's point, we are here to empower our translators, and our social responsibilities make sure that the translators have meaningful and fulfilling jobs. And all of our tooling is about that, making sure that the next generation translator is provided with all the tools to be profitable and to be productive. So I think what approaches from both angles, how we build things and who we build things for and with what purpose.
Yeah, and I think we've seen, in the industry over the past year or so, we've seen instances where other translation providers have really put downward pressure on price, right? We talked initially about kind of this slow growth environment or this business contraction, and that's hurt other localization companies as well, right? No secret, other LSPs have went out of business or have had very slow growth in kind of the traditional lines of service that maybe have been very, very good for them. We don't feel like we need to do that really, because what this tool is really allowing translators to do is boost productivity, right? It's really do more and kind of, everybody's looking for a lower price point, right? That's not a secret, right? But what we really want to be able to do is take that translator who is, maybe translating 2,000 words a day, right, at a certain price point, and then double that, right? Make them way more productive. They're going to get a lower price point, but they're going to get the same kind of take home, right? And the relationship that we have with our translators, allows us to kind of, and this has been the really positive thing about how we work with translators at Smartling. They've been in the loop this whole time with us, right? They've provided us feedback on the tools. They provided us feedback on the AI. They've really been along for the ride. And so we've had people who are really invested in the solution and really benefiting from it. And they're kind of seeing, in contrast to some other places where, they are feeling pressure on rates. They're really seeing kind of like an equilibrium here, right? And I think that's really positive.
And I think we'll talk a little bit more later when we go into the tooling about the points where translators actually are entering the journey much earlier than they would have later, where we actually, from the design of our prompts and from the design of our AI solutions, we always make sure that the linguist voice is heard and the linguist feedback is obtained. So we'll talk a little bit later about that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to just start digging into that now. So, Olga, for you, what does this mean for, we kind of just touched on it, but the next generation of not just translators, but general human machine interaction? And then if you could go into really what AI/HT is, yeah.
Okay, great. So I think the next generation of human machine interaction is on top of everybody's mind right now. It's not just localization industry, right? There is a lot of fear, there is a lot of concern, there's a lot of hype, there's a bit of frenzy. And I think our role is to make sure that everybody is absolutely comfortable working with a machine. One thing, actually, to Andrew's earlier point, that we're partnering very closely with our translators is we make sure they receive the training that allows them to be productive in the environment that we provide for them. And right now, we already have some AI components, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I think the right training and helping the translators stay up to date with the tools, but also deploy the tools that really help translators, not chase together with them the next best thing. So I think and if we think about it, to Andrew's point, we were in the CAT environment, right? Then so we were in the fuzzy matching world, then we introduced machine translation. Machine translation got better, and now we're introducing generative AI and other machine learning models. And it's very important to help translators be successful on every step of this journey. And probably the latest evolution is probably the biggest leap forward. So maybe from there, on the subject of human-machine interaction, maybe we could talk a little bit about what the AIHT is. So yes, thanks so much. That's what I was waiting for. Appreciate it. So here is our little elevator pitch and very short explanation of AI-powered human translation workflow actually is. Our philosophy and our principle here at Smartling is AI has a good home on every step of the translation process. There is always something AI can do for a translator and AI can do to deliver the end result to our customers. So if we start from fuzzy matching, right? So we start the project, we run the fuzzy matching. This is where AI takes the first pass. So this is where fuzzy matches are elevated to the next level or to the next bracket. So what does it mean? It means that the translator is more productive, but it also means obviously that the next generation fuzzy match is also effective for our customers. It's faster time to market because the level of effort is lower. And obviously that's a different conversation about how the translators are compensated for this. So I got a question, really funny question. How do you know that your fuzzy match repaired with LLM does not do more harm than good? Like, how do you mitigate LLM hallucinations? And at this step, it's not just blind, like, hey, LLM, elevate my fuzzy match. There are guardrails in place that helps us ensure that fuzzy match does the good and is really a TM match, enhanced TM match. So we have some ML techniques that actually help us do that. Then we go to AI translation. We still see, there's a lot of debate. So LLM or NMT, LLM or NMT, we still see not only that NMT quite often comes on top as a translation engine, but also different MT engines still have their different, if you want to say, voice. So it still makes a lot of sense for us. We still see a lot of value in utilizing different engines. As you can see, there is also GPT. You want to explore that option, perfect. And there is also an option of custom engine, and we still see about 30 and sometimes 40 and sometimes even, like, we once went all the way to 100% performance increase between the custom engine. The custom engines gets more weight, but even then, the other engines still have a fair chance to compete. If a particular strain is like more colloquial or more formal, another engine, again, based on a set of AI parameters, would outperform the custom engine. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You always have your plan B. Then another part, glossary terms are identified and applied. And the beauty of it is we know that if you brute force terminology into neural machine translation, has been a problem for years. If you just inject terminology, what does it do? It gives you the nominative, right? The original form of the word. How good is that for your fluency? Not necessarily. So this is where, again, large language models are used to insert glossary terms in a morphologically accurate level and also preserve the fluency and grammatical accuracy of the target string. This is also, Andrew mentioned, all the beauties of HTMLs, right? Removing tags around. You have a JSON file, and then, like, you deal with a whole new gamut of issues. This is also where tags are fixed, and this is any kind of like formatting that needs to be performed is performed. So again, AI at play. Then AI translations are edited or validated depending on the necessary level of effort. And again, there's quite sophisticated AI technology behind the scenes to decide how much do you actually need to do, whether at all, on a particular string. So, and this is where expert linguists, very confident and comfortable within our tools, come into play. Now, we said a little bit, I mentioned that linguists are part of our development journey, tooling development journey from the get-go. We have a prompt engineering tool, in-house engineering tool, where, I mean, our data scientists can only speak this many languages, right? And for the languages where we need linguist validation, where to go in and have the linguist iterate on the prompt and design the prompt until they are actually comfortable that it does the trick. So we always make sure that what we do for your target language, including long tail languages, actually is fit for purpose. End result, satisfaction guarantee. We are committing, we're using MQM scores, just like a good portion of the industry is. We're really committing to 98 plus. Like we'd be challenged to see a score of 97. We're like in the ballpark of 98, 99. And then we have the LQA suite. And again, there is a lot of work on the roadmap, making sure that we can automate our quality estimation as much as possible. So that's it in a nutshell. I know, Andrew, if you want to add to this in terms of value for the translator, or you're the end customer of this. So maybe
Regina had a question in the chat, and I think this may be a good opportunity to kind of explain, right, how we can have a lower price point at the per word level, right, and still also make sure translators are not really getting like economically like harmed in the aggregate, right? And the way we're going to do that is by making them more productive. And you can kind of see in this workflow, right, all the things that Olga just talked about, right? The AI enhanced TM, that's something a translator would do manually in the past, right? They would kind of make those adjustments to maybe lower matches, right? Customer may not get a benefit from that, with respect to how we've set this up, but now the translator is really just focusing on the review, and they could process a lot more words, right? So this is really a measure of productivity, right? So we want them to be able to get more productivity and be able to do more, right? Now the tasks are going to change a little bit, right? You can see that here as this is laid out, but they're really going to be focused on things that at the moment, like the technology is not going to be able to do, right? So, and that may be things like, correcting a hallucination, right? If a customer is using a Gen AI translation, or, doing some tricky tone and style changes, right? So those are things that, we think that translators are going to continue to add value for a long time. I don't think that's something in the next year or 2, 3 years, we're going to see fully, AI translations. But today, what we want to be able to do is turn around to our customers and say, you're in an environment where, you still need to grow and you still need to get your content out to, your customers and, your audiences. How do you do that? How do you do more with less? And this is really that solution. And the goal is to not displace kind of the translation workforce at the same time, right? And so, we've seen other language service providers, approach, their cost challenges by just saying we want to have a rate cut, and that's not really what we want to do here. We want to enable translators to continue to do more and more and more, and that's what this solution really allows. And I hope that answers the question, Regina. But happy to, if you want to continue on some time for Q&A at the end, if you want some more conversation about this.
Great, thank you. I think, before we move on to comparing AI HT to some of the more traditional conventional translation methods, rather, there is a question. Andre asks, how do you measure the quality of the engines between them when choosing which one to apply for the current job?
Actually, first, I think we need to emphasize something. It's not on the job level. So that would be on the string level. So you really evaluate it for each individual string. And then there is an ensemble approach running behind the scenes. As I said, we give higher weight to a custom engine. And it's still our high recommendation to customize the engines. So the custom engine gets the high weight. But there is also a combination of different machine learning techniques that actually evaluate each string as a fit for purpose. So a lot of things are taken into consideration, such as translation edit rate, and there is a model measures on translation edit rate. Then there is semantic similarity. So there is a whole gamut of different techniques that actually allow you to slice and dice into each individual MT output and determine which one is best fit for purpose.
Yeah, and why is this good? Like, why is this good for a customer? Why should a customer care about this, right? Like, so if I'm a customer, I can plug in my trained engine, right? And then most of the time, that's probably going to be good. If you have good translation data, right, your glossary is good and your translation memory is good, that's going to be a benefit for you. But what this allows, and Olga mentioned, I think you said this is Plan B, right?
Yeah.
This is a good Plan B, right? Number one, it mitigates the need to do continuous retraining, right? Because you always have like a high quality fallback. And it also takes away some of the imprecision or inefficiencies in like generalizing to say like DeepL is good for German, right? It's good for German most of the time, but it may not be good for every German string that comes through. And what this is doing is it makes that engine compete on a string level with every other engine for the best translation. And there are other providers. We can incorporate a GPT provider and your own data, but this for a customer is really kind of getting is putting a safety net right under your workflow, but it's also kind of giving you a really high quality option every single time, wherever that may come from.
And maybe I could add to this. As you can see, we have a post-processing step. So say you make a decision not to proceed with a custom engine, then you select between generic engines, but that's where the glossary insertion plan is also, that's where it also comes to play. So as much as we recommend training, there'll always be cases where it doesn't make sense for you budget-wise, or you just do not have sufficient training data. And this is where you still get the best bang for your buck, because you also can use the glossary insertion and just make sure that your terminology is managed in the morphologically efficient way.
Yeah, and even with customers who do have glossary, Olga, right? That glossary insertion do have translation memory. I'm sorry, and do have a trained engine. That glossary insertion is still a benefit for them. That doesn't go away.
Absolutely, because that's where you get the accurate morphology, right?
Yeah.
That's where you get your fluent sentence. But definitely, there are different scenarios where we would work with whatever the linguistic assets are at our disposal and whatever the objective is. Because sometimes style is more important than you definitely want to make sure that you train the engine to the tone and voice. And since we have GPT in the picture, we're also obviously doing a lot of work on what we can get out of model fine tuning with your data, and where we can get the highest wins.
Yeah, there's a good question in the chat. I don't know, Kelsey, if you want to kind of take this up now, but Angela's asking about language level performance data for AIHD. Like what, maybe there's some lack of confidence in some longer tail languages.
Maybe I could take it, and Andrew, maybe you could take it from the supply chain perspective, but it absolutely is true, right? I mean, there are certain bulletproof things where you could just know that, it's more generic, language neutral LLM technique, and that would be pretty bulletproof, right? If you don't use large language models. But obviously, MC still has issues with long tail languages, and we do see uneven performance across different languages. So we always make sure that the languages that we roll out are performing well. And we are very mindful of the underperformers. And then we will just pick the parts of this process. Again, it's our internal process. And we'll just say like, okay, hey, we're going to repair fuzzy matches. But for this language group, glossary insertion is not working that great. So definitely the performance is uneven. But this is exactly where we're trying to see what we can do with different fine tuning and training techniques to compensate, for instance, for the shortage of training data in long tail languages in inherent LLMs. So there is always a way, but we would never overcommit. So Andrew, maybe back to you.
Yeah, and that's why we have like a linguist review step in this process, right? And I think obviously you're going to have different levels of efficiency and different levels of performance. Everything goes right in steps 1 through 3. Linguist is going to validate and say this is a good output, right? And then submit it. And if if we need to update glossary or the string needs to be rewritten, and we do see that, right? And that's okay. That's what that linguist review is there for. And as a service provider, what we want to do is stand behind this entire process, right? Steps 1 through 4 with a quality guarantee, and say we're gonna guarantee that you're gonna get a human quality output. In some languages, it's going to be the efficiency is going to be really high with the automation and AI, right? It's going to be really well optimized. And in some languages, it may be slightly less, and that's okay, right? That's reflected in kind of how we work with our translators and all that. So, that's only going to improve, right? So as kind of these solutions get more sophisticated, right? We're going to see those differences, I think, even out over a long period of time. So.
I would actually really love to take the next question, which is what is the difference between current Smartling MT and AIHT process? And that's what Andrew introduced in the beginning. There is tremendous difference between traditional, you get the output over a single MT engine or even multiple MT engines, and you just go into your post-editing process. Here, as you can see, two things are happening. AI is enhancing the quality of the translated string, right? So the string inherently becomes better, more relevant, more fluent than what you could get from generic machine translation. The level of effort is measured, right? Usually MTPE is one size fits all. You furnish the string and basically you're working with that string like you would work with, and you yourself decide what the level of effort is going to be. And here it comes with a level of effort recommendation. Then also the quality estimation is different, right? Because in this process, AI is a fair player on the quality estimation step. And that's something that's definitely a big differentiator, because this is where you tap into the translation memory. And this is, again, where LLMs are doing, from what we can see, a very, very fair job in estimating the quality, including semantic similarity, including relevance, and actually including relevance to translation memory. So I would say the difference is MT and the kind of simple process as opposed to full end-to-end AI-powered process.
Great. And I think
Go ahead.
I was going to say, while we're talking about comparing, AIHT, can you maybe share also how it's different from MTPE?
Actually, I think we kind of tried to address it, but again, if you look at AIHT, it's AI powered human. MTPE is a very linear effort, right? It's a very linear effort. You have furnished a string and then you modify it. Here, maybe we could approach it differently. Here, we're really talking about human machine interaction on the next level of both quality and predicted level of effort. So it's the tremendous difference between one size fits all and a lot of predictions and improvements already made on your behalf.
Yeah, and I think from a customer perspective, this solution is a lot more flexible than an MTPE solution, right? Where you're going to be able to apply this to a lot more content types, a lot of things where you may require moderate levels of creativity. Whereas with MTPE, depending on kind of whether you're doing a light MTP or kind of like a 2 review kind of thing, you may not want to do that, right? You may not get the right output from MTP. We feel very confident, and we see customers, customers who have, their marketing departments have translated millions of words using the solution at very high quality levels, be very successful. Where traditionally you may not want to use that kind of linear single engine process that Olga was talking about a moment ago.
If you guys don't mind, I'm going to still literally 30 seconds and talk about data privacy. Data privacy with large language models is probably one of the biggest concerns. So basically, our integrations with LLMs inherit all the certifications and data privacy commitments, overall platform certifications and data privacy commitments. So we studied the SLA. We had our legal team study the SLAs of external LLM providers. We make sure that wherever there is an opt-out option or opt-in option, that's honored. Or we also make sure that we work with the providers where the commitment is made that no data will be reused to train the engines. Also, we actually have a process in place. Another concern is passing PII, personal identification information, and we also have mechanism in place, making sure that the PII is controlled. So we are really confident that we can pass the strictest InfoSec when it comes to data privacy and give you data privacy guarantees. Maybe one other thing I want to mention, we make sure we stay generative AI, LLM agnostic. So some of our customers, for instance, only prefer to work with OpenAI models. Great. Some of our customers more leaning towards, say, Google models. Fantastic. We can address that as well. And we are increasing our LLM portfolio. Again, not chasing what pops up tomorrow. That's impossible. But making sure we get the best results.
Yeah, Kelsey, if you don't mind, I don't want to hijack the rest of the chat. There's a couple of really great questions, and I love like the questions we're getting. They're really wonderful. There's a couple questions about kind of translators here, and so Brianne has one about speed. So like right now we're seeing like a doubling in speed, basically, right? So from a customer perspective, like this is really great, and this kind of goes back to the productivity benefit for translators a little bit too, right? And then in terms of going from two humans to one human and losing that check, right? That kind of second set of eyes. Um, what do we do? What measures do we take to ensure that a single linguist is competent to handle that task? So this is really kind of like a very kind of like service level, very specific provider kind of thing. But we are almost exclusively like a direct to freelancer translator model, right? And so we work directly with the translators. We vet each individual translator that comes and works with us, that provides translations with our company. So we know who we're working with. We feel comfortable with their competencies. We vet their backgrounds, their experiences, all of that stuff. And at the end of the day, we're only accepting about like 5% of people who apply to work with us. So we're very, very comfortable by plugging somebody into this model because we know who we're working with. This may be a more risky model, if you have multiple layers of LSPs, right, between the customer and the translation, right? So this is something that I think, Smartling is really kind of well positioned to use, and in other circumstances, it may not be as great if you don't know who's doing the translation.
There's so many fantastic questions. I wish we could stay a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I don't know, Kelsey, do we have time to pick a couple more, or are we on time?
Yeah, I was going to say we have about 10 more minutes, so let's move into keep addressing the questions. Thank you to everybody who's submitting questions. Feel free to keep dropping them in the chat, and yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'll just quickly address the question about BERT, whether we use it. Actually, Roberta is, which is adaptive version of BERT. It's a part of the process that we use to select the best string. And again, we're absolutely, we are open to what comes in terms of large language models. We're also looking at experimenting with Mixtral. We actually just did a project with it. And for instance, we're obviously Claude 3 is a big thing, so we're definitely going to start testing Claude 3. We cannot chase them all, but we're definitely addressing and watching the growth. And actually, that's going to address another question. Does it slow us down? We have both engineering process and architecture in place to mitigate the latency, but we also have the feedback loop with actual LLM providers. And if we're dealing with huge latency that slows us down, we work and we collaborate with them to eliminate and mitigate that latency. So no, I wouldn't say, and Andrew, you'd probably confirm that no, we don't see any major process slowdowns with that, while being mindful of the latencies that LLMs can introduce.
Yeah, I think you're always gonna have latency when you have like significant volumes and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't really see that. That's not something that comes up very often.
Like we were just experimenting with a new model. I'm not going to mention who, but one of the big models out there. Okay, it takes 4 hours to complete the job. Not going to fly. So then we go back to our dev team. What can we do? Multi-thread, find multiple endpoints. There is always a way of mitigating it, or just wait until the LLM provider actually have solved their performance issues. There's another one actually, which is a big one. A lot of LLMs now you can only integrate with them in a plain text mode, and then it's a big question of how do you actually deal with tags. So that's another issue that we are doing our best to address and resolve.
Great, thank you. We had a question come in the Q&A from Justin, which I think is a great one to ask. Justin asks, I'm curious to know what your answer is to the question that language service providers hear from both clients and internal colleagues. Why can't we just do all of this with AI?
We actually, and Andrew, I'll pass it on to you in a second. We actually developed a talk track for our team's external talk track, which provides answers as to why dollar for million characters is a fantastic idea, but why will it not necessarily work? I mean, first, it's a quality, right? The models still do hallucinate. The model that's not fine-tuned or is not using the RAG approach can be very irrelevant to your content, or it can just be short data for long-tail languages. So you definitely are much better off using a more sophisticated approach, like, hey, integrate with the API and do it all there. And the other one is obviously the whole, like, do you really want to do the integration in-house? And then the third one, again, because of the hallucinations, you're still much better off with a human in the loop. Just like machine translation for some content types, you're just fine doing, like, I don't know, like level 2 knowledge bases. You can do it perfectly well. The third one I would say is also, if you do not know how to engineer the right prompt, it's like a cab driver. You don't tell the cab driver where to take you, you don't know where you're going to end up. So if you cannot engineer the right prompt, it can be very difficult to get the right results out of language model. So multiple things. You need human on multiple steps. Andrew, after you.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Not every organization is going to be able to like scale a solution themselves, right? I mean, some may, right? That's fine, but most will not be able to. And there's a lot of value to having, I think still a TMS layer that is, configured to be a repository for your data. You can still get the cost saving. There's a lot of advantages still to kind of plugging into like a provider, right? For this, I would also just say, with, you know, there are some industries where you're always going to want to have somebody looking at whether it's from MT or LLM, right? They're heavily regulated. You may have compliance requirements. You may have strict liability that you're exposed to. So it's not in a place right now where you can just kind of like pull the ripcord and translate millions of words at scale through LLM, right? We're just not there yet. And I think there's a lot of benefits to kind of working with the provider from a cost savings perspective, from a quality perspective, all that kind of stuff.
There's a great question here that I would love to take. How do we, like, back to you, maybe your point about two-step versus one-step process. I wanted to make a point that in an essence, validating and reviewing the output of AI, it is already editorial effort, right? So it's kind of like the translation step is already taken care of to a great extent by a model, be it machine translation or combination of machine translation, non-LLM, ML, and LLMs. So it's already done a lot of heavy lifting. It's ensured consistency, it's referencing translation memory. So in a nutshell, you are already acting as an editor. So for a lot of content types, the quality guarantee is in AI is already providing sufficient level of quality and helps translator do their job. To add to this, we do have in place a set of checks that actually do check translators' job at the end of the job. So that safety net is still in place. To Andrew's point, the TEP as we know it has not gone away, and there are content types where you absolutely still want it in place, even more so for regulated industries like legal and life sciences.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think we'll wrap it up with one final question, which is there obviously, so much has changed in the last year with AI. So what does this look like in 6 months, in 1 year, in 3 years? Where do you both see this headed?
If I knew where it's headed in a week, I'd be lucky. So
Look, a year ago, we weren't even really talking about this solution, right? And so like that's how fast things have changed.
But I think what's going to happen, though, I mean, if we try to be serious about it, I think what was happening, and I don't know if you guys would agree, I think 23 was a year of a little bit of like chaotic. Let's see what we can grab and let's see how it can help. And I think a year, that 24 is going to be a year of measured deployments, where you really know what you want to get out of AI and you really measure the successes and KPIs and know why you're doing this. So from the practical perspective, I think that AI-based solutions like pre-edit the source, post-edit the target, monolingual target generation, they will all take shape. And it's not, and a lot more predictability. A lot of work is definitely going to go into mitigating AI biases. I thought that was a fantastic question on biases and figuring out how to give LLMs and AI in general the right set of instructions to do exactly what we expect them to do and mitigate the hallucination and predictability. And for what it means with translators, CAT tools, as we know them, probably going to very soon be a thing of the past. Right, Andrew? We chatted about it behind the scenes. So the translators, as we adapt the CAT tools to different content requirements, that translators will need to learn how to operate in this new CAT environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what are they prompt co-pilots, like something like that, right?
Language co-pilot is actually a great point. I forgot about
Yeah.
it. Language co-pilot is our internal term for what we're aspiring to be and what we want to be for a translator.
Yeah. Look, I think like, it's hard to say where we'll be in 2 or 4 or 6 years, right? Like this is gonna, this is going to change a lot of stuff. I was listening to something earlier today, and we're talking about the industrial revolution, right? And the steam engine came along, and it basically was able to do the work of like 1,000 horses, right? Like the same amount of productivity that you get from 1,000 horses. And I think like we're on the precipice of that kind of change, right? And so like that's what we're really talking about here for customers. And the benefit they're going to get from this is there's a lot of content in the world, right, that is not getting localized, right? And what they're going to be able to do is localize that content from a industry perspective, right? They're going to be able to localize that content using a variety of different solutions and kind of workflows, but it's really going to be with some sort of AI foundation to it, right? At the end of the day, and what that looks like, hard to say. But I think we're kind of like at this stage where we're right before like a really big unlock in productivity.
Cool. Well, that is all that we have time for today. So thank you both so much, Andrew and Olga, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. And thank you for all of your questions. This was really great discussion, and we appreciate you all being here. And we hope to see you again soon.